question to all of you. We've heard the topic of mental health being connected to the past of our communities and also being connected to the pressure of always showing strength. And I would like to hear, what is the cost of always having to be strong? What are the negative effects on our mental health if we only have to be strong in front of our families, of our communities, but even in front of ourselves? Is that something that resonates with one of you? Then please just jump in so that we get our conversation flowing.
I can start us off. Is my microphone on? No? Yes? No, I'm playing with the audience. Someone says yes. But thank you. So, Karen, thank you so much for the question. Also, thanks to Liz for the invitation. And the negative consequences, I would start from more of an educational sciences perspective, which looks at what we learn. And then we obviously usually think we're learning good things, like we're learning things that are useful. We learn how to self-determine and how to make good decisions for ourselves, but we also learn harmful things. So a part of my research is early childhood education and about how power and being disempowered as people who are targeted by racism, how that works. So basically, to cut my long story short, we don't learn how to regulate ourselves in a self-determined manner. We learn to function in structures, in rooms that have been made without us in mind, and sometimes they have been made to exclude us. So while white-centric rooms, West-centric rooms that have been built on colonial knowledge are working for a white person to pass through the room, think of science fiction, and their chip shows them you belong here, and they give you ease. With us, we are constantly getting in and rubbing up against different structures meant to dehumanize us, meant to question our experience, but in the sense of making us doubt our own self-view. So in my life, I have been in the community for, I was counting 1993, so definitely over 30 years. I am old. And one of the ways that shows up is in anxiety. So I also know that I react with anxiety towards the political moment in which we are in which imperialism is just being openly, on one side it's very validating to say, we've been researching and talking about this for years and you've been saying we're crazy, now you can look at this. I want Greenland, I want Venezuela, I want this, I can just go over here and take this. But on the other hand, it's anxiety inducing. So a perspective that is going to center us, our Black lives and experiences, would mean that we have to find tools to deal with anxiety. And I would start with myself, but I would say it's also pertinent to all the Black lives who are connected to me. So we need to learn new things.
Okay. Just to add on to that, I think generally there's a saying, Tupac said this in his lyrics, in the Only God Can Judge Me. He said, that which cannot kill me can only make you stronger. That is true to some extent, but there's also a process of weathering and sensitization, which means the more stress you come across, so stress is placed on you, you cope, and then it continues over and over again. Now there is a stress pathway in the brain called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which when that is activated, you produce cortisol. A state comes where there isn't any negative feedback, so there's more and more production of cortisol. Now the danger is that your stress pathway can be constantly primed, where you're living in a state of threat, and we know excessive cortisol leads to an increased predisposition to developing depression. Also, an increased HPA pathway can sow the seeds of psychosis. And if we look at the research, particularly with migration, we know that people of first generation migrants, there's an increased risk of psychosis. It's more in second generation migrants. In fact, the risk of psychosis is more in the second generation migrants. And particularly when you come from a society that is socially, culturally distant to the host nation you're coming in, particularly, and when we look at the research all over the world, particularly when you're coming from predominantly black countries into a white-centric society. And it's interesting because I think sometimes, so I've mentioned the increased risk in depression and anxiety and increased risk in psychosis, but sometimes we put pressure on our kids. I know coming from Nigeria, there's this high achievement thing. So we say something to our kids like, you need to work twice as hard as the white people. And I think that's destructive, really, because I think it basically puts pressure on them, and we put our dreams, aspiration on our kids. And again, that isn't healthy at all. Why can't my kid just work as normal? And why don't we look at correcting a society which forces our kids, the next generation? We spoke about the legacy of what our generation would be if we're first generation migrants, on the second generation migrants. Well, I don't want to say we want to encourage mediocrity, but if a mediocre second generation can get the same benefits that the mediocre white generation gets, then I would argue we've evened the score. Why do we have to perpetrate that? Work twice as, or 3 times or 4 times as hard to get the same rewards? So I know it might sound a bit controversial, but I've had to learn it from my kids. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. I just want to add that, as you already said, it's becoming embodied over time. So because it starts quite simple or implicit, for example, if you suppress your feelings and your needs, and also your kids watch you do that, so they will just tune in and do it, and you won't allow them to show vulnerability and what they need, so they will just adjust to this environment, and you have to be strong the whole time. And your body, or our bodies, are designed like to keep it for some time and to cope with stressful or traumatic events, but they are not designed to stay strong like the whole time. So it starts behaviorally implicit with things like, I said, self-suppression, and small kids do this already in the kindergarten and in school. And then over time, you embody this in all the systems of your being, psychologically, biologically, and then, of course, it will harm you. And then you have this also late recognition of it, like you see you can't do things as you used to do them. So you show signs of burnout, for example, but you don't know that you're burned out because that's the only option you thought there is, because rest is not an option, and slowing down is not an option, not being strong is not an option. So since you embody this, it also shortens your lifespan. So it does something to your, it does even something to your DNA expression. It does something to your gene expression because it shortens your life. So biologically, as you already said, your system is under alert the whole time. And this kind of stress damages you slowly. There is also this John Henderson hypothesis, which says you can cope with certain things, but you have a long-term cost. So you can be strong in one moment, you need to, but if these moments happen quite often, and the moments are not moments, this is the condition under which you're living, and this is structurally, so then you'll pay the price. And then we see this also with our first generation parents. They get earlier sick, and they die earlier compared to parents of our friends, for example, who get to turn 80, 90, and so on. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I just want to pick up on what our dear brother said about the pressure, the stress that parents put their kids through. I mean, when we talk about it, it's more like, oh, you have to excel, you have to do this and that. It sounds like a mere statement, but it has severe impact on that person. We look at it and we're like, the power of the brain and the impact, and he was talking about partxxx, this cortisol releases and how it's affecting our health and everything else. So when we are talking about the pressure from parents, it's affecting not only us to perform, but it's also affecting our health. And I know in the course of this, we're going to delve more into the health aspects as we dissect it as time goes on.
Exactly. This is where I would like to pick you up on, just bringing us back to Wasan Cherie, who writes, "You carry the weight of your family's story in your body." I guess this is something, we just dissected in this session. But indeed, Stephanie, I would like us to also look at the chronic emotional suppression that increases the risk of anxiety, depression, and physical illness. When do people realize that this is more than stress, as Muna just pointed out?
Yes, and I would like us to look at it from a biological and a community perspective. I'm so happy that you touched on the partxxx because the body has a part of the brain called the amygdala. So let's go more biological. The amygdala is the alarm system of the brain. It works with the pituitary gland, right? And so for the body to react to what is happening, demand, okay, go, you must buy a house, you must marry. Are you 35 and you're still there? That pressure, the body is reacting. And how the body is going to cope with it, we are moving from that hypothalamus version. So it works on the adrenal glands and asks them to release cortisol. You mentioned clearly about the cortisol releases in our brain. I tell people a lot, when we say a person is under constant stress and we have this active modus, how can we best imagine it? Ask yourself. It's like, I tell you, it's like a switch on the light, right? From a biological perspective, this light is on now. Imagine you're in your house and this light is on. It never goes off. Whether it's morning, whether it's evening, it's always on. What is it going to do to you? Think about it. It's going to affect your rest. It's going to affect your recovery. It's going to affect your well-being. Imagine a light that is always on. And that's what, when we talk about a stress, something that is always on, that is how it is in your body. The body needs time for it to calm down. And so that never goes on and it's affecting us. And so we need that to shut down so we can really relax. And when we look at it from the community perspective, we are seeing more and more how it's reflecting, more high blood pressure in the community. We are seeing more obesity in the community. We are seeing more type 2 diabetes. And you ask yourself, is it just the lifestyle or what is it actually happening? It's the long working hours. People have pressure. They have to work back to back. People have to do night shift. People have pressure from home. They have to function. And did you know that there was a study that actually asked, how can stress affect our health? Because it's so hard for us to imagine the stress affecting our health in the community. And there was this study that they did in the USA. It's called the Jackson Heart Study. They asked themselves one important question. Why are our African people suffering from hypertension and cardiovascular diseases? And this study started back in 2000. It continues to date. They evaluated it. And this study is showing us that what we are seeing in the community, that people are having all these chronic illnesses, all these hypertension, it is related to social stress and life stress. The study confirms it. They are keep publishing, they are informing us. So to answer how people know that it is more than stress, it is when the body is no longer functioning. It is when that light that we see in this room is always on, it never turns off. People realize it's no more stress when it becomes a health diagnosis.
And this health diagnosis, it is a process to get there. It is a process that we can include the people that are close to us, the family, the community, to talk about. And that's why I want to bring you in, Pastor Nick. The Ghanaian philosopher Kwame Jekeya reminds us that community and spirituality are central in many African worldviews. What are we not honest enough about when it comes to mental health? And where does faith support but also silence these struggles?
Thank you for the question. What are we not honest about when it comes to mental health issues? There are a few points I would like to address. First of all, the realities of what I would call hidden illnesses. You know, as communities, we lack the acknowledgement of certain realities like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the likes as illnesses. We rather would consider them as mood or weaknesses, or someone's weaknesses, and therefore it's coming in again, toughen up, man up, be strong enough, and you can come through it. Instead of acknowledging them to be, to have their biological factors as well as environmental factors. So there we need to learn to be very honest. The second thing from the religious perspective is what I would term as supernatural interpretations. You see, we as Africans, we have this dualistic view of the world. You hear it among Christians, among African traditional believers, among Muslims, where you hear something like, you know, the world, there are two realities. The spiritual controls the physical. It's not just a Christian theology, but that is how we conceive the world. So what actually happened is that most of the time we tend to look for spiritual root causes of things and also to these realities. So instead of trying to find out what is the root cause of the depression, of the PTSD and the anxiety, we will rather look into our families, which witch is there, which auntie is from the village, which taboo have we broken, which altar is in our families, and all that. And this is quite problematic. And I think we need to learn to be honest about that. Another factor, I think this leads to the third one, which I will call the inefficiency of prayer-only solution. Yes, prayer works, hallelujah. Our faith works, God works. But I believe God works in a holistic approach. So we have also the therapists, the psychologists who are also there, and I call them ministers of God to serve in our well-being. So even as we are praying, it is equally important that we seek these helps. But another one I also want to address is also the inefficiency of the therapist-only approach, especially in the context of Germany. So many people are disappointed while contacting therapists here or on psychological issues, because the problem here is they are unable to get into our framework of reference to deal with our realities and the things that we go through. So they have this approach that does not integrate some of the realities that is beyond their European realities. Where do we include our faith? Where do we bring in our family network of support? And this holistic approach also, they also lack it. And we need to be honest to realize that sometimes the therapy-only approach is inefficient. Yeah.
Let me bring you back in here again, Stephanie, because that would really connect to another question that I had for you. What happens when people do not see themselves reflected in mental health system? As Pastor Nick just mentioned, this system is just not made for our communities. So what happens when the gap becomes even bigger?
This is what we face today, unfortunately. And just like you said, we look at the healthcare system and we are not seeing more and more black professionals in the healthcare system. I was recently talking to a lady and she wanted to seek help. But she is the first generation, she's paying her tax, she's working, she has lived in Germany over 20 years. But when it comes to actually seeking help and sitting down to talk to a psychologist and saying, I feel this is not going, that German words to use, oh my God. She doesn't even have the words to explain. So you see, language is a problem. Some people have lived here, they have their kids, they have grown, but they cannot express. So if we have more and more people in the healthcare system who they can communicate with, this would help bridge the gap. Because the healthcare is there, but it's not reflected in our community. Yeah.
So when,
Sorry.
please go ahead.
Thank you. I want to emphasize this because also in the Afrocensus study we had this, in the research it was clear that there is a dual exclusion. So either you don't have access to the healthcare because also you don't know what options you have, you don't speak the language, etc. Or when you have access, you experience very discriminative and also racist structures and also on an interpersonal level, of course. And then you have these difficulties on these two levels. So either you access it, and then it's bad, or bad experience, or you don't access it at all, which means like you don't get healthcare. And this also causes a lot of, when you're in the healthcare access, a lot of misdiagnosis, a lot of mistrust on the people, and it harms you even more because you're not getting what do you need? You're not getting the care you need. Even if you made it to, okay, I need to talk about my mental health, I'm actually not doing well, and then you can't access the system, means like it's a double exclusion.
And that is why we have a project called the Diaspora Medical Mobile Clinic. This is an initiative of Black professionals. I'm talking about the Black doctors, the Black psychologists who speak your language. Is it Yoruba? Is it Igbo? Is it Chiga? Whatever the language is, they are there. And this project is something that we have called into life through Honorable Irene Appiah, which is now working. So with this, we also help our community. Because I think if you go to the psychologist and you say, oh, I have my child will translate to the psychologist. It's not going to work. How is that your child going to really understand your feeling in a way? So we hope that with projects like that, we can help also the healthcare system, just to support what you said, Dr. Uma. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't work in Germany, but there's a concept of cultural competence. So I think it's great having, people that look like you, that understand your culture, treating you. But there's going to be a time, there needs to be a case made for having the community, the therapists reflect people in the community. So that's one. So how do we advocate for more, more ethnic minoritized people in those positions? But it's not just the diversity of the person, it's diversity of thoughts. And hence, we need more culturally competent therapists. They could be white, they might not necessarily look like us, but we need to make a case about how does that training, how do we get them to be culturally competent? And I'm sure a group like this can advocate. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, in order to get that training, you have to explain to that society the benefits that, okay, maybe Hamburg is becoming more diversified communities are coming, they're contributing to the economy. If they're stressed, if they're becoming unwell, that means this is how much Hamburg loses. Those kind of arguments. And I know it's about economics, but they say, like Wu-Tang Clan said, cash rules everything around me. Gotta make the money, dollar bills, yeah. So sometimes, unfortunately, you have to make the case, the economic argument, So culturally competent therapists, irrespective of race, I would say.
And until then, and I know, Akim, this is also a specialty of yours, until then, when language fails, culture speaks. So you already cited the Wu-Tang Clan here. So why is culture, pop culture, such a powerful way to talk about mental health?
So this is a pet passion of mine, because I ran an organization with a colleague of mine, Dr. Becky Inkster, called Hip Hop Psych. And basically, what we do is we analyze hip hop lyrics from Tupac, Eminem. We published on Kendrick Lamar in a very high-profile journal, Lancet Psychiatry. But it's not just that; it's also the movies and TV shows. So, yesterday I supported a resident doctor where we were talking about The Sopranos. Now, Sopranos is an Italian family, a crime mob family. But that toxic masculinity, which could apply to any society, we have the Andrew Tate movement, we have toxic masculinity in our culture. But looking at how we talk, but culture is important because when people have an illness, whether that's mental health problems, they manifest it in different ways. So we spoke about language, for example. I'm Yoruba. We don't necessarily have a word for being depressed. Often we will say things like monronu, which means I'm thinking too much. So in the Western psychological terms, that would be rumination. So sometimes within hip-hop lyrics, you can basically get some of those truths. So I'll give you an example. Even if we are looking at mechanistic processes. So Tupac on his torso had this thug life. Now, some of you would say, oh, he's a thug. But that thug life in hip-hop is a bit like CREAM. It's an acronym. And it stands for the hate you give little infants, F's everything. So basically what you're talking about is adverse childhood experiences and how that can impact on having adverse psychological and physical health problems. So some of these, whether we're talking about artists or some of these movies and TV shows, they do portray mental health. They talk about these things. And sometimes that's an access. When we start talking about music or TV shows, it's an entry point into having these discussions around stigma or discussing mental health issues or even discussing treatment. Sorry, I rambled a bit.
No. That was not rambling. I think the applause shows it, and the applause also shows that you are active and still with us, which is amazing. That's why I would like to give you the chance. Yes.
Definitely want to hear back from you, but before we do that, a challenge. So, listening to the colleagues up here, there's a normalization of pushing ahead and functioning, of making money, and then we've heard on the other side that the normalization is the hate you give to little children will F everyone up.
Yes.
So we are living in tons and tons of dehumanization. And since from an educational perspective, I would say we need tools, and those of us who are parenting will probably know that when you go to your kids' school, then you have teachers who assess how they've been doing so far in the year and then make some suggestions about what needs to change. What is not assessed is how the child is doing socially. Are they very anxious? And what kind of suggestions can be made to remedy that? So since I like to think out of the box, and apparently I've been struggling with my partner who doesn't want to go to therapy. My partner is very anti-therapy. I hope you'll get there at some point. My partner is also African. I'm East African, he's West African. And he always says, you're going to therapy, people are telling you things. I'm like, no, they hold space for you and give you a mirror so you have the time, the structure, to think through your stuff and to figure out where you want to go. So maybe, since people are making apps now, I'm watching a lot of YouTube and there's all of this stuff. If you think about something, you can turn it into an app. Maybe a challenge would be to use the UN Decade for People of African Heritage for Hamburg to make an app about how we're getting African, Schwarze, Afrikanische, Afrodiasporische, so Africans, Black communities, Afrodiasporic communities, into a therapy setup where we look at our anxiety. Berlin can make an app, and then we can compare apps and have a challenge. So maybe that's something that we can actually get some funds for. I'm thinking more like what kind of innovations can we use, and then we can use the cultural repertoires, the frames, hip-hop culture, for example. We can use spirituality as a frame. I totally agree. Our paths are never divided. faith and therapy and figuring things out, and also dealing with realities all interconnected. And we need to have those reflexive spaces. So that would be my moving forward challenge. Anyone who wants to work more on that can come and see me.
So, Maisha threw the ball right into the audience now. Okay, yes, this is amazing. So how are we going to do this? Yeah, okay. Can I have it? Okay. So let's start right here.
That's the benefit of being new. Thank you so much for this very, very, very interesting panel. I just want to point out one thing that I feel is also very, it's a good tendency that is coming nowadays. I see that at least in Ghana, because that's where I am often, I see that there's a trend in the generation now to be open for therapy, especially for those who...
Kenya, because in Kenya it's not there.
Yeah, no, it's the thing is, trends are made and set by, looking at the modern world, in so-called modern worlds, and it looks like those people who are the rich ones, they go to therapy, so the middle class and the others will mimic it. So you have the tendency now that people are saying with everything that they are trying to do, oh maybe I'll go to therapy. And I think that's a kind of gap that we can all tap into and make and professionalize it for us to break through, because we all know that we don't like to work with psychological things. So maybe we should use that little trend, which is actually working for us now.
Thank you.
Dr. Akuma, my name. I'm a biochemist and molecular biologist by training. I have some comments to make. First of all, thank you for the very nice talk. They were very impactful, I think, for our community. I learned a lot. What I want to say is raising on some points that you made about language. Language has a very big role on how we perceive the world. For example, we are talking about mental health. That's a very good point. But my suggestion is how we can go about it, how to impact our people. Just the fact that we are using the word mental health indirectly and subconsciously, we are putting ourselves that something is wrong. Yes, something is wrong, that you are sick. So an alternative to that could be mental fitness. Because if you use the word mental fitness, you are still addressing the same problem, but it gives you power to go about it. So you see how language really plays a role. I'm not a religious person, but I can quote something from the Bible. It says, death and life lies on the tongue. So what we proclaim, what we speak, is going to impact. We also had a colleague here who was talking about genetic imprinting. It comes from epigenetics. That we can also give how you impact your DNA through language, through culture and everything, and it goes back, and it goes through generations. That can be good or bad. That is just one aspect of language. Again, about language, when I read at this poster, it said anti-Schwarzen Rassismus. We all get the point, what we want to do or what we want to tackle. I will suggest, I've been thinking, how could we pass this message in a way that it empowers all of us? Because when we say anti-Schwarzen, already we are putting ourselves in a state of something is bad, you are fighting against something. Yes, we want to fight against something, but how do you go about it in a positive way? Because we say anti-Schwarzen means black is bad, right? Black, that is how I perceive it. So black is bad, and that is what you are proclaiming or you are pushing into the universe. But something is when you are pushing that into the universe, evil, you attract more to it. So I would suggest, I was thinking that how could we have used a better word? Maybe we would say pro-black. But if you say pro-black, and then because we are not fighting against other people, let's say against the white people. Now a white man can say, okay, pro-black, you want to tell that you are better than us? So I was suggesting that maybe we could have used the word, we are one human family. And with that you have embodied everybody. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's gather. I'm taking notes. I'll bring the questions back to you. So,
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Princess. I work in the intersection of migration and youth. We're talking about mental health and we are talking about the African community. And I just wanted to bring it down to individual experiences. I'm going to use myself as a case study. I came here to study and I'm still learning the language. So sometime in December, I had a little bit of a rough time and I didn't step out of my house for like a month because I was really in a bad state, trying to make a lot of decisions. And then it was Christmas and then there was this gathering of Africans and I was like, oh, this would be a good place to go, meet your own people and all of that. And I went. And then I was talking to someone on the phone and then I was telling the person, I said, oh, I've really been in a dark place for like a month. This is the first time I'm stepping out of my house in about a month and everything. And then when I was done talking, the people in the room, someone wanted to introduce me. And then the person said, that is Princess, Queen of Ijogbon.
of what?
Ijogbon. And I'm not Yoruba, but I know the word. So I thought it meant stubborn. So I was like, why are you calling me the queen of stubbornness? And then someone said, no, it actually means someone who has mental problem. So I was like, you heard me talking to someone on the phone that I went through a bad situation. And the next person that steps into the room, you use what you heard to describe me. And it hurt me so deeply at that time because I was like, this is supposed to be home. And what I realized is that we can gather here and have this conversation. But the real question is, how aware are we individually? Let's not talk about professional. Let's talk about home. Let's talk about friends. Let's talk about people we're in relationships with. How conscious are we about when the other person is breaking, and how do we step in? It's very easy to use the word empathy, but do we really understand what it means to be empathetic, to create space? So I don't want us to, I like the discussion, but I would really want us to be able to bring it down. Because every day we are interacting with ourselves.
Then let me do that. Sorry. Let me do right that. Let me bring it down, yeah? And let me bring it back to the panel, if that's okay?
That's okay.
Yeah? Let me bring it back to the panel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I feel like there's also movement here on the panel, and I want to bring these thoughts back to you. So how aware are we as a community when we even can't keep the spaces where we try to share, where we try to open up, and then we actually hurt each other even more? So how aware are we? Is it the time for us to talk about mental health? And if not, how do we get there?
Yes, I would like to address that question, relating it also with what our Honorable Irene had said concerning Ghana. I am an advocate of pastors having to take theological education. Why am I, thank you, yes. Why am I saying this? Theological education is not just about learning the Bible, quoting the Bible, and knowing the verses and speaking in tongues. It's much more than that. It deals with issues of Seelsorge. It has psychological, sociological studies and everything, and I believe it offers a great tool to the pastor to be able to lead the congregation in a holistic way. So I believe that if pastors in Ghana, in Africa, elsewhere, could be offered theological education, there are some preliminaries accompaniment in mental health issues that they can even tackle even before there is an invitation to a professional to come in. At least they have some basics in terms of orientation and everything. How aware are we of this reality? There also, I think the church can play a very big role. I am talking about the church, but also talking about religious institutions. John Mbiti, the famous African theologian, speaking of Africans, says, Africans are notoriously religious. That is what I believe, that if our religions are geared in the right way, it can solve a lot of problems, including some of these awareness problems. The stigma that is attached to mental health issues, like our sister has experienced, for example. When I read the Bible, when I see, for example, the book of Psalms, which we know talks so much about celebrating, hallelujah, praise the Lord, it is also one of the books that I believe creates room for lamentations, for anxieties, expression of how you feel low, even how depressed you are. So if we understand that our Christian faith creates rooms for expression of anxiety, griefs, even depressions, then it will help us to take away all these stigmas that we add to the mental health issues, just as our sister has experienced it. And also to understand that we are human beings. To be human also means to be open up to vulnerability, and our faith creates room for that. So I think the religious institutions can play very big role in this awareness.
Okay. Sorry.
I have a question to the church.
There's a question to the church.
I have a question to the church. And thank you so much for what you shared. I felt it deep in my spirit. And in our African community, we use that a lot. Growing up in Ghana, when somebody has a mental issue, you hear, oh, that's mad woman. Did you not see that mad man? Imagine you are here in Germany and you see maybe an autistic child. They will say, did you know that child who is not normal? They always attach it to it. There is a problem in that community. There is a problem and we have to talk about it. There is a very known lady on TikTok. She has an autistic child. The child is 23 years old. And I had a program with her a month ago. And she told me something that really shook me. She said the discrimination she experienced, people stigmatizing, talking behind, was not people outside, it was the church. The church is where she faced the stigmatization the most. So I know, Pastor Nick, you did mention that the church has the support. But listening to the reality what people are saying, I just wanted to know from you, how is the church helping in these instances? Because I know people who have ADHD, maybe Down syndrome, because of it's affecting the mother's mental health, it's affecting the child. They chose not to go to church at all. So maybe can you elaborate more how the church can be of support, as you said, please?
when the professional corner the pastor.
Charlie.
Yes, Charlie. Yes, I will humbly say that most of the time when it comes to this conversation, the church does more harm than good to people. And I'm saying it from a place of repentance and a place of acknowledgement. Now, some kind of theologies that we propagate, especially the theology of faith, sometimes harms people. There is what I will refer to as mental health or moralization of mental health. In John chapter 9, we see a case of a blind man. Jesus met this guy, and the disciples were curious to know why this dude is blind. So they say, is it because of the sins of the parents, because of his own sins, or because of someone else's sins or fault? And Jesus says, no. What kind of theology is this? Why must this sickness, illness, be related to a moral decadence? And most of the time, that is how we explain some of these realities. This thing, you have these things because of sin, because you don't have enough faith, because you are not strong enough in the Lord, because you don't pray so much. And I believe the best thing the church can do is, first of all, to stop moralizing these realities of mental health, number one. And then also, secondly, spiritualizing strength. You know, we all live on the dependence of the grace of God. None of us is sustained by his own strength or by his own power. So our weaknesses, our challenges should push us more to acknowledge the power or the role of God in our life. And I think that is what the church should encourage, rather than looking at the vulnerable people as if they are not spiritually strong, or maybe it's because of any sin. That is why they are in such a situation. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a direct response to what was just been mentioned. I would like to give you the floor, and then I would like to bring it back to the panel, because we have two other questions that we would also like to address as well. So please go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Araba Mwidu, the lead for Ghanaian. Oh, okay. Hello. Yeah, so I'm the lead for Ghanaian women in Germany here. I live here in Hamburg. Thank you all so much. I came personally because of the topic, mental health, and I'd like to address what was just said by Dr. Steph. First of all, thank you all for being honest. Thank you for that comment on positive words of affirmation. It's very, very important. And I think we should all intentionally inculcate it, because we subconsciously propagate negativity. And when it does happen, then we cry. So let's also take responsibility for our actions here in this context. When Princess was speaking and Dr. Steph asked about the church, I think first of all, we are the church. We can't point at somebody as the church. We all are the church. And it comes to a point that we all have to accept the roles that we've played. I should be the last person to defend or say otherwise. Ghanaian woman, we partnered with one of our women in Ghana, Techuman. She takes care of special kids. And we have about, I think, 28 kids now, very special, and we don't get governmental support. And you don't even get private sector supporting, because it's a cultural problem that when you support children like that, you'd attract curses on yourself. And so we had a farm that the people who started this orphanage, they were here in Amsterdam and moved to Ghana and started this thing. She's lost the husband and she's trying to continue, because you can't just leave it. Like, they have nowhere to go. Anyway, long story short, the farm got burnt because the people thought that now we're getting more children in the orphanages, and that's a problem. Now you have children, some of them even don't have limbs. Some are very special. The ones with limbs do have, let's say, mental challenges. And I'm just saying this to buttress the points that I think, I'm an engineer by profession. I have studied everything and anything in all parts of the world, from Harvard to wherever. I've done it all. And I think that when I was going through the process, I thought that if I studied everything, finally I'll be accepted. I thought that if I worked hard enough, if I masculinize myself, I hide my curves, I speak like a man, I show them that I can do it, society will accept me. I have done the circle, and I realized it's a big lie. I regret some of the sacrifices that I made to get to where I am. But it's okay. I did that to get to that point of realization that wherever you are now, whether you are studying, whether you've achieved it, whether you haven't, whether you're married, whether you're not, whether you want kids, whether you're in love or heartbroken, you are okay. You are perfect as you are. You are enough. I think that let's start right there. You are enough today, and tomorrow we'll figure it out. Start with that, because if you carry that pressure on you, you will never be good enough. And trust me, I have done it all. I think at my level, I think I was a doctor at 34, and I'm studying. I'm still in law school. I don't know what to study again, actually. But the point is, the point is, you don't have to do the circle and get to the realization. You can study from other people. I was looking at Esquire. She's done the full 9 years educational system. I had the privilege of talking to her ladyship. I like to call her Esquire. She doesn't like the titles, Irina Pia, I mean. And you could see someone who'd also gone through the mill and the circle. And you realize that, oh no, there's no end to this thing. There's no point that your expectation that, oh, when I finished a bachelor, you know, I'm going to get the accolade. When I finish this. So please, let us first of all put that pressure off. Number 2, I like that we accepted that spiritual and taking actionable steps is the solution. So we should also accept that the church is led by humans trying to make it. We are all sick in church. We went there for healing. So please, let's lower expectations when we are in church. We are there for God. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna end this. We're gonna end this panel exactly on the question of healing, because we've opened up the box and we need to close it. But before we do that, I would like to take the questions that we already had, and would like Dr. Akim to address the questions of language. We heard mental fitness, positive framing, as well as the question from Irene about the trend that we see in Ghana at the moment about, is therapy just for the rich, and what can we take from it? And please to also add to whatever you wanted to add to.
So first of all, Princess, thank you so much for sharing that. I would just say, the topic here says, each one, teach one, and I would add to that, challenge one. So there's something to be said that when you are in that circumstance and you are vulnerable, someone else should be stepping out and challenging that person. Because I think in our communities, sometimes there's this need to be together. One thing we need to do is sometimes we need to cut some people off. I know we talk a lot about social capital, social connectedness, you know, and stuff like that. But if that community is toxic, if we need to cut some people off, so be it. So what we can do going forward is, from today, we would be the mental health advocate. And in our communities, whether that be the church, the mosque, in our communities, if someone says anything derogatory against someone with mental health problems, we take them to task. We make it our decision to educate them, so no one has the experience Princess had. But thanks for sharing that. Okay. Now to the question about language. I hear what you're saying, but to be honest, I don't think there's anything offensive in mental health. What is health? You know, health is a state of physical, psychological, social, some would say spiritual well-being. You understand? And yes, people can have mental health problems. So I think that that's pretty straightforward. You understand? So that would be my take on it. In terms of the language against anti-racism or stuff, I think sometimes what we need to remember is, when you talk about racism, it's something done to us. We are minoritized. We are othered. And I think we need to call out the horrors of it. I think that's very, very important. Now, Again, this is someone that doesn't live in Germany, so please, I need to be careful with what I say. Let's say the Holocaust, for example. The fact that the Jews are able to call it means there has been a reckoning in Germany, and what people have said is that never again. Why did that come up? Because the word Holocaust, genocide, horrific though it is, it doesn't sound positive, but because it's called out for that, it's happened. But the consequence of that, again, me looking from the outside, is that there's a risk of Germany becoming a post-racial society, because then the racism gets centered in a space around that 1939, 1945, when the Holocaust came out. Forgetting that in 1904 to 1908, there was the Herero people, there was the Nama people. It's enough being spoken about that. That conversation didn't really get started until about 2021. So, guys, we should not allow, it's not our role to make white people feel good about themselves. If I need to speak about the horror, I'm bringing it to your face, to your mama, and take my drama with me. You understand? I'm not there to make you feel good about yourself. So I hear about affirmation, but when there is horror, when you minoritize me, when you other me, we are going there. I'm coming, you understand? And it's out of a place of love, because until we name it, until we call out the horror, then we can't do anything. And then the final point about therapy. Yes, I do believe it's a good thing. I know in Africa, in Nigeria, and I'm sure in Kenya, the good thing I'm seeing is about the younger generation is they are more aware about mental health problems. I don't know if that is because it seems as if there's almost like a monoculture now. I know we condemn things like Facebook, Instagram or stuff, but what happens is now among the young people, there's a common language, a common denominator, so people are able to talk about those things. So yes, that's happening. Some people use ChatGPT. There might be a case for things using more digital devices, especially in developing countries where you can get access to these psychological services rather than seeing a therapist, making it culturally sensitive. And I just want to say, in terms of culturally sensitive services, in terms of the research, there is, from the School of Divination, Duke University, I believe there is metacognitive therapy for different faiths, for depression. So you have one for Sikhs, for Islam, for Christianity. If you check the Duke School of Divinity or something along, I think it's pioneered by Richard Koenig. He's done a lot of research on that. And there is also culturally adaptive cognitive behavioral therapy. I know in the UK, there's a lady called Layla Lawton. She's published on it. So you might want to check those resources out. Thanks.
I think this has been snippets of the workshop that you're also going to offer. I know there are a lot of hands still here in the audience, but we have 3 great workshops coming up by Dr. Akim, by Dr. Muna, and by Dr. Stephanie. I believe we all want to have this exclusive time in the sessions, right? Right? Give me a yes if that's the case. Give me a no if that's the case too. I just want a yes, then give me a hand. Wonderful. Then what I would like to do now, I would like to do an abrupt closing. I know it's not nice, there's no transition, there's not going to fading out. I like to do an abrupt transition into the workshops where you continue these conversations. If you are interested in following up the conversation with Dr. Akim is going to talk about pop culture, right, and mental health. Muna is going to talk about community healing, family, right? And Stephanie, I have it here, is going to talk about mental health literacy. So we can just take this conversation into a setting where you actually have the opportunity to speak out. But before we do so, I would like to take a minute to introduce the book that you see here in front. It's in German and in English by Evelyn Waitira-Müller, who's also here with us today. The title is Where My Name Sounds Different, Lessons from Decades Abroad, where she highlights the exact conversation that we just had here on the panel. And it's a book for you to take with you if you want for today. Evelyn, if you want to come to the front and address us briefly, perfect. And that would be the closing of the panel. And I will then let you know where the different workshops take place.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Like you've heard, my name is Evelyn Waitira-Müller, and I am a psychologist. I currently lead a Telefonseelsorgestelle, tatsächlich, I want to say in German. I originally come from Kenya, migrated to the UK at the age of 20, joined the British Army, was posted here in Germany, met my German husband. That's how I ended up staying here. And while I was here, I remember well, I've been here 20 years now. It was really difficult adapting to the environment here, settling, building a life here. And I remember thinking to myself, actually, I'm a privileged person. I've gone to university, I have good jobs. I worked with immigrants at the beginning, but there was always a heaviness, similar to what you were talking about. And I remember at some point, much later on, after I transitioned, built a life, thinking to myself, what was that? What was that? So I looked for literature which address mental health issues or the emotional side of migration, and I couldn't find any. Maybe there are, but I couldn't find any, especially for the German setting, I couldn't find anything. And I remember thinking to myself, I've seen immigrants breaking down. Why are they breaking down? What is going on? People have a good life. Some do, some struggle a lot. And while I was going through that transition, I actually was journaling. So I went back to my journal to look at what was going on. And I noticed that there were themes, and themes that even other people had talked about. Themes like loneliness. We don't talk about it much, but many of us go through it, and that causes depression. We are community people. Africans are community people. Coming to an environment where you're alone is difficult. I noticed that, and I checked, obviously, literature. So later on, I checked literature. Is there literature about this? And I found stuff. We go through migration grief. We don't even know that such a thing exists, but it affects us. What is migration grief? We go through the pressure from back home and the families that break, like there's a lot of people breaking up with their families because of that. I know so many stories of people who said, I don't want anything to do with my family again. I've gone through that. There's a time 7 years, I didn't talk to my mother and stuff like that. So I wrote a story about that to try and raise awareness. I'm emotional because I'm so grateful for this opportunity to raise awareness about that, because I want people to know. Sorry, I don't even know why I'm crying. I guess it attests to my passion. I want people to know, like, these are the emotional things that we go through when we migrate. And this is how we can deal with them. So that's what the book is about. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Evelyn. And as I already mentioned, the book is here. Evelyn will be here throughout the whole event, so please also use the opportunity. Okay, as I said, I'm doing the hard cut here. Just letting you know where you can continue with the workshops. So right in this hall, in this room, Dr. Akim will stay here, and we'll have the workshop on hip-hop and mental health, or pop culture and mental health, not just hip-hop. In the room on this floor as well, if you leave the hall on the right side, is the hall Kinshasa, Addis Abeba. Addis Abeba, this is where Muna will have her workshop. And on the second floor, you can either take the stairs up to the second floor or take anxiety, and yes, exactly. Or go to the take the elevator to the second floor. The hall, Kinshasa, will be Stephanie with the workshop on anxiety and depression. So, do you all know where you're gonna go now?
Literacy, so the education on mental health, and the topic we are going to be focusing on is anxiety and depression. That is the correction to that. Thank you for asking.
So I hear the professionals in the house. So wonderful. So let's get this going because we're already 1 hour late. So yeah, let's do this. And of course, a big thank you. A big thank you